All right.
So does everybody know the secret of taking advantage of the crowd that you're speaking to? Everybody know the deal? Deal is make friends, right? Until people know you, who the hell is this guy and what does he have to say? But once people have shaken your hand and you've smiled and you've introduced them to somebody else that they should know, all of a sudden they want you to succeed, right? So just a little, have you tried this before? No, I haven't. You gotta try it. You gotta try it. Hi. Okay, I'm a little bit about me. I'm one of the other things you should know is that writers are terrible speakers overall. There's a reason why we write instead of speak. And so I'm gonna do my very best. I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I'm 71 years old. Are we okay? Sorry? Oh, but I haven't started yet. Oh, no, don't worry. Oh, no, I'm in charge. I'm in charge. So, there are some people that I want to acknowledge. First, we haven't decided whether you're part of the groom or the wife's or the bride's side. One is Novo Nordisk. I started talking about this stuff with your guys in 2018. And how cool it is that you have done as much as you have done. And when you see, who knows Mike Rubio? Raise your hand if you know Michael Rubio. Tell Michael John said hi, and tell him it was sensational, please. Second, Caroline and a beer. Where are you? Caroline and a beer. Are they not here yet? They are wonderful, wonderful platform leaders from sitting in Marseille, but working in Syria and Jordan. It ain't easy to build a business in Syria and Jordan. So would you give them a hand? Because they're doing fantastically. There you go. And I think they'll be back in here in a minute or two, so that hand was there. Third, Niels and Lars and Nils, Mark Holt, free agents. I had the best time yesterday morning. We had a little bit of a debate. Where are you, Nils? There you go. We had a little bit of a debate, which is can full-time hiring and freelance live together? Is it a marriage or is it an awful affair? And I think we learned that there are some ways that you can do it, but it ain't easy. How many of you in your platforms are trying to bring together full-time people and freelance people? Raise your hands. It ain't hard, it ain't easy. So let's talk, thank you, Vera, about that. It's not an easy thing. And then finally, Tasso, the first time I heard you speak was in 2017. I had the pleasure of writing for Insights for a little bit of time. You were the James Dean of this industry. It was so fucking cool. It was, okay. Let me just start, if I can. I'm gonna give you just a bunch of stats, and forgive me if I'm not as professional as I should be at this, but I like to use paper. Freelancers do about 1 billion hours of work a week. I think it's a 2.5 trillion. I know Barry Matthews says that it's more, and I'm willing to buy that from Barry because I trust him. But we don't really have very good data on really the size of this stuff. You know, it depends on how you count. We see 60% more freelancers since 2020. We count about 800 to 1,000 freelance platforms globally. And in there, I'm counting FMSs, et cetera, because they're still in the supply business. And we see about 200 in beta. I get 3 to 5 calls every week from somebody that would like to ask a question or meet someone or get a little publicity. And it is a growing, happening thing. Here's a guess. How much money has been spent investing in the fintech industry to support freelancing and contingent work? What's your number? Yell. This would be your time to say, here's my best guess. Nothing? $1 billion. 5 million. Shit, he makes more than that. Come on, man. $2 $256 billion has been invested in fintechs supplying our industry. What's the message here? The message here is, like in Sutter's Mill, sometimes it's better to sell the clothing and the tools than it is to sell the mining. Next, what we now know is that, you do the math, about 30% of freelancers are full-time, about 60 to 70% are part-time. Now that's an interesting stat, but even more interesting than that stat is that 40% of the US workforce, as an example, is what we call freelance light. That is to say, they have a side gig, they have moonlight, they have a business, something's going on where they're making extra money. For those, raise your hand if you're in a corporation right now. Raise your hand if you're in a corporation. To what extent does your organization know how many of your folks are side giggers? It's a very interesting thing. What do side giggers bring you that regular employees don't? I need interaction. It's very hard. I'm a short Jewish guy, and if you're not talking to me, I'm dying. So what's the difference? The 40% are building or are running a business. They understand how to run a business. They have the confidence of having built something separate from their employment, and they can tell you to screw off. You also have the opportunity to build them into your organization in a much more profound way. Next, 62% of freelancers at the end of 2021, think about what was happening in 2021. It was not a pretty sight. We're satisfied with their work and we're satisfied with their pay. And here's the kicker, the last piece. You are all in the process of being disrupted by the corporations because they want to kick you out if you're running a platform, and they want to create a talent cloud. And they want their talent cloud to provide the resources that might otherwise be provided through a gateway, through a platform, etc. You have the opportunity to partner with them, but if you do not partner with them, they will leave you behind. It is a real issue, and be aware. How many of you have talent clouds currently in your corporations? Now, here's the dilemma of that, if I may, and the reason why you're in a little bit of a defensive position, please forgive me, and that is because most of the talent clouds in companies are not managed very well. They don't give a sense of community. And so they become digital warehouses for talent. They become job boards. Remember when Worksome was a job board way back when in 2007? Because I actually remember that. That's a scary thing. Where's Matthias? Yeah? You guys matured since then. The corporations haven't. And you need to help them. So that's a little bit of the tour of duty. Any other questions about that? Anything at all? Okay. I don't mean to be the answer man, but I spend about 200 days a year talking to folks that are either in your business or thinking about getting in your business, etc. And we've learned something really interesting about it. And what I want to share with you are the 6 challenges that I worry about. First, helping freelancers get what they want from their experience. We know an awful lot of organizations that do a great job, and we know some organizations that don't do a very good job. We know that in general, only 10 to 15% of freelancers on a platform get any work at all. We know in the big platforms, it used to be 2%, used to be under 5%, it's now more like 3 or 2%. And the problem is 60% of the freelancers are new since 2020. They need your help. And if we're not creating a platform that really serves their needs, they're not going to stay with you. And by the way, what's your guess about the number of platforms in general people are on? What's your guess? 6? 5? 1 to 2. People are saying, in general, I'm going to focus on this one as long as it does good. And if it doesn't do good, I'm going to move to something else. So, next, we have a philosophy called freelance first. I think TopTal is the first adherent of that philosophy, but there are also many others. I know that you know Juno is one. I sure know that Klaus, your organization, Yelber, is one. And that is how to help freelancers, how to prioritize freelancers' success. When I first started writing about TopTal, what I learned was that TopTal's clients were its engineers. It was not. Is that still the way it is?
In some cases.
Yeah. That the notion was if you selected and you treated the engineers with great help, they would be fantastic. As you think about the platforms that you are on, to what extent do you prioritize the freelancer's success and prosperity? That is critical because that forces you in turn to have great people, and it forces you in turn to begin to enable these people to team. And at the end of the day, if you're not getting your folks teaming, Klaus, as an example, you got a problem. Next, teaching clients to be effective partners. I'm going to show you some data in a little bit. Next, trusted talent partner. I am so excited about the stuff going on with Barry, and the way that I'm describing it, if I may, is growing enterprise trust without losing the counterculture. We were all part of the counterculture once. We're all in this because we're part of the counterculture. We may wear suits, we may wear cashmere sweaters, but at the end of the day, I feel like a bohemian as much as I always have. And that's one of the things that drives, but we can't do that. We've got to professionalize if we want enterprise because they're all about risk reduction. We need to be as good at reducing the risk of hiring our folks as we possibly can. Next, and that's why we're doing the Trusted Talent Partner work. Next is collaborating for growth around the world. Vera, where are you? Vera? Oh, good. Hi. Vera is the newest member of the Spanish contingent that has met together now 3 times to help grow the market, to share best practice, and to be a force of impact for, legislation, which is currently not very felicitous for freelancers. German platforms are getting together this summer. LATAM platforms are getting together this fall. The Mideast is going to get together in 2024, or so help me, I'm not helping you anymore. The idea here is we are better together. We are better together. And then finally, it's a time of just incredible innovation. I'll share some of that. Any questions yet? What do you think, Danny? Doing okay? Cool. Here's what freelancers want. People have been asking me for a variety of ways to describe this, but at the end of the day, here's the data on what freelancers want. They want work. But they don't just want work. They want interesting work. They want work that builds on their CV. They want work that enables and ennobles them. They not only want work, but they want a continuing flow of interesting, attractive work, which says, I ought to stay connected to this place. Bluebirds is a French platform that every week sends a note to all of its freelancers saying, here's what we got. You know, not a lot of people get that work, but it's sure good to know that there's a continuing flow that makes me want to stick. Third, freelancers want help in managing their business because most of them don't like managing their business. I certainly didn't. How many of you are freelancers here? How many of you like managing your business? Oh, 1. Nice work. It's really important. And part of managing my business means providing them with the services that they need because they come to platforms hoping to get help that kind of approximates the values that they get as an employee. Why do people worry about being freelancers? They worry about income volatility, they worry about loss of benefits, and they worry about loneliness. We can solve all of those. Those are all solvable problems. We just got to stop thinking of them as gigantic and start thinking programmatically of what we have to do. Fourth, They want help in future-proofing their skills. One of the things that we know about freelancers is that they are about a third more conscious of continuing education needs than regular employees. And they are because if they're not up to date, they're not eaten. And finally, they want help in building an engaging and active community, and one that helps them to increase their commercial as well as professional capability. So I write a lot about hunting in packs because it's a whole lot easier to get work done and to get work if you're hunting in packs. Next, this is one of my favorite slides. I wrote an article about this a couple, 3 weeks ago. I hadn't looked at these data, and then I looked at them. It was like, wow. First-year freelancers have a problem. You can see these data in terms of how many of them are saying, I agree completely with these data, right? So 30% in year one say it's an attractive career opportunity. It's not so much around building expertise. It's not so much around quality of life. Basically, what they're saying is, I don't know how to do this. I am trying, and unless I'm getting help from my platform, I don't know how to be a freelancer. I've been an employee, or I've been a consultant, or I've been a teacher, but I don't know how to be a freelancer, and it worries me. And so that's a scary year for people. Year two, they get it. The people that remain get it. And look at the jump in terms of just positivity on every dimension. And then again, from 3 to 5, the question isn't whether they can do it. The question is whether that's a life's work for them. And an awful lot of people realize after 3 to 5 years, it's not my life's work. But a lot of people believe it is. And they get excited again about the prospects. Make sense? Here's the implication of this stuff. And that is almost all of our L&D, all of our onboarding, all of our help to freelancers is in year one. We forgot about years 3 through 5. And it's a more important year. It's a more important period for you guys who are running platforms because they're performing a whole lot better and you want to keep them, right? But in order to do that, you've got to help them over this hump. And this hump is this me? So the stuff that you're doing, if you're giving coaching, that's fantastic. If you're providing workshops that help people to figure out, is this the right thing for me? Perfect. If you're giving them a mentor, perfect. Those are the kinds of things that make a big difference. Any questions about this? Am I boring, or is it just that I'm convincing? How many would say boring? How many would say convincing? Convincing. Oh, good. Please.
Just where did you get the data?
It's called the Global Survey on Freelancing. It was something I produced together with the University of Toronto, representing 77 platforms and 2,000 people, and most of your organizations participated in it. So it's pretty cool stuff. And what's particularly interesting about this group is that these guys were 80% full-time. So think about it. They'd already made the decision, and they were still going through all this stuff. Other questions about it at all? I hope you will, because this is important stuff. At the end of the day, we're here for people. Please.
Can you say that there's like an age span normally when freelancers start?
You know, it's a very interesting question. What we found in our survey, 30% of the freelancers are 50 years old plus. 50 plus. And you might say, well, there must have just been a reduction in force, so they just sort of piled on. The answer was no. Yeah, the answer is no.
What do the numbers mean?
Sir?
The numbers here in the columns.
It's just a percentage of people saying, yes, I believe strongly that this is the case.
Okay.
So it's strongly positive. Nobody wants to look at like neutral. That's boring. Please. Any other questions? Is there one? Sir?
Can you see a difference between the American labor market and the European labor market?
Sure. On multiple dimensions. The first is you can't fire people. The US can. So it changes the deal, right? Second is Europe is very focused on marketing services and creatives. There's less going on in terms of tech, except Eastern Europe, and there's less going on in terms of independent management consulting. But what you'd see is that in the US, there's not much more in terms of independent management consulting, but there is a lot more in terms of tech. And I'm going to show you some interesting data in just 1 second. Any other questions? Sir?
So I'm just wondering, whether you feel this rise of freelancers may have a risk of erosion of the corporate cultures, because the more people are self-sufficient, the more they are reluctant to lean on all the corporates.
Fair.
This kind of thing.
So the first question I'd ask you is, how many corporate cultures suck?
I think it's less about the culture, but more about like unnecessary, maybe, processes and signature things that companies feel are important, but the people are not really.
So I'll rephrase the question. How many companies, blah, 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 what you just said, suck?
Well, you are the job.
And I don't mean to just be facetious. What I mean to say is that my experience, I spent 25 years in HR. I've run HR organizations. I took 2 companies public that are in the HR space. And what I learned was that most organizations didn't have what I would call a talent culture. Didn't really have a talent culture. They were about okayness, but they weren't about greatness. And what I'd like to suggest is that there's actually a benefit, if you do it right, to having freelancers in who not only represent, in many cases, top of the game, but they can also mentor your organization. They can also share what's going on outside that you don't know about. They can also bring in new ideas or innovations that you haven't thought of in your organization. There was a judge in the Supreme Court called Frankfurter, and what he said was, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I would like to suggest that in many cases in our organizations, we're holding on to a culture that was yesterday's culture instead of tomorrow's culture. And there's some value in the sunlight. Is that an overstatement? I hope it's not. But it might be. I'm a person of extremes. And
Maybe just a point to add to that, and then one question.
Shoot, and then we'll go to the next thing.
Cool, hopefully it works. I think the other point is with this isn't saying suddenly 80% of the organization is going to be freelancers, right? So if you think of the freelancers that are in large corporates today, it's probably less than 3%. Leveraging top talent, leveraging freelancers isn't going to suddenly overpower the corporate culture or the ethos of the company. But actually, if you can bring in top talent that support the enablers of the organization to benefit the whole, I think that's a positive thing.
Can I add to that before you ask your question? How many of you like the Marvel movies, right? Thor and all those guys. I mean, I liked them, right? Pretty good. Freelancers. It was built by freelancers. It was a $200 million company that started and ended within 6 months, fueled by freelancing. So when we talk about, the 80%, 20%, I'm going to challenge that. In 2013, Accenture said, we will see by 2030 a Fortune 500 company that only has full-time people in the C-suite, that everybody else is freelance. Now, that may be a little extreme, but I think you could find a place in the middle that's a little more of what we're doing than what we're doing now. What was your question?
I don't think that will happen.
Cool.
I think it could be, but I just think it's very.
And it may not. It may not. But my job is to dream.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
My question was around US, Asia, Europe. Generally, yes. Europe's 5 years behind the US, Asia's 5 years behind. This is an overstatement again, but generally, how do you see that in the freelancer space?
I think that what we're seeing is that second and third generations are picking up really fast. So we're seeing a lot of stuff going on in LATAM that we didn't see earlier. We're seeing a lot of stuff in the Middle East that we didn't see. Caroline and Abir, now you're back. Oh, good. We were talking about you before you came back in. And we were saying that you needed a round of applause because you're building something incredible in the Middle East. Can we do that again? So, I don't think it's behind. I think it's different. And I think there is some cultural stuff around it, Dan. But I also know you know more than me, so I'm going to shut the hell up and let you answer the question as well. But I do think that there's a lot happening in Asia. I'm on the board of MASH. It's a wonderful little sort of $3 to $5 million marketing services place in Melbourne. They've just started an office in Bangkok. They're starting an office in Vietnam. So I think what we're going to see pretty clearly is a whole bunch of stuff coming in that way. And then some of Japan is going to come down the other way. Any other questions? Sir.
Thank you. Out of these data, I was curious if you identified also on average what are the most important drivers for the freelancers. So do they prefer flexibility over interesting colleagues, for example, and so on?
I won't answer your data, but I'll nudge close to it. And here's how. This is data on how freelancers rate their clients. And here's what we find. What do you see? What do you see? Tech's easy, isn't it? People get tech, right? By the way, that's Europe and the US and Asia. I mean, this is global data. So people get the tech side. Creative services is tougher. And the third is independent management consulting. Now, I want to give you why the management consulting stuff is tough. We know how to hire McKinsey, we know how to hire BCG, we know how to hire Bain, we know how to hire EY, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's say we hire somebody from Talmix in the UK. Let's say we hire a consultant from Malt, right, from France or Spain. And here's the experience of this consultant. Most of them being former, not young, but they tend to be sort of director level and partner level when most of the folks come in these days. I think that may be changing, but that's been the trend. Let me tell you about my life before I joined this crazy industry. I was a consultant. We had a firm, we had 3 partners. It did very well. And I would get out of bed and a black car would greet me at the appointed hour. And it would take me to the airport. And I would get on a plane and sit in first class. How many of you have been consultants, by the way? Does this sound familiar? Yeah, sound familiar a little bit? And then I'd stay at a 4 or 5-star hotel. I'd roll over to 9 a.m., right, at the new client site, and they would be waiting for me. They were excited to see me. And then at the end of the gig, I go back with a taxi to the 5-star hotel. I get back on the first-class plane. I take the black car home, and I look at my wife, and I say, somebody paid me between $8,500 and $12,500 a day. Let me tell you, it's a market price. I ain't worth $12,500 a day. Where's Barry Matthews? Where's Barry? He knows I'm not worth $12,500 a day. So that's the challenge when you think about the consulting guys. It's a different deal. It's a fundamentally different relationship. And it's hard to move from being one of the chosen to just another schmuck. It happens to all of us, but some of us resist. So what does the data say overall? What percentage of clients know how to work effectively with freelancers? At the most, half. So you got a big job to teach people how to work with freelancers. If you're in the procurement area, you gotta not only have an onboarding that says, here's how we work, here's our business, et cetera, but you've got a few other things to do as well. Let me give you those things. There are 6 things you need to do. And write these down because they are from God. The first is, not from me, from God. The first is, your company needs to have a philosophy of contingent work. It needs at an executive level to have had the conversation, and most of the time, not Novo Nordisk, most of the time, the problem is that all the freelancers are coming in at a project manager or director level, and senior management doesn't even see it. I did a project for McKesson, the large global pharmaceuticals firm. They asked, tell me about our people. I did sort of a people audit, human capital audit. I said, 30% of your organization are freelancers or contractors, and you didn't know, and you have no idea. And yet you're as dependent on them as you are on your full-time employees. Second, work deliverables, milestones, and timelines need to be fair and realistic. I make a living based on my ability to meet those milestones, to deliver on those outcomes. And if your outcomes are not realistic, if your feedback is unhelpful, I'm screwed. I can't get the next job because I got to be good at every job that I do. And in order to do that, I need to know what the rules are, what the measures are, what the outcomes need to be. Third, I'm paid fairly for my work for this client company. You can see the difference in management consulting. I used to make a lot of money. It's not that your rates are off, it's that my baseline is wrong. Next, client project managers work well with freelancers. Take a look at those data for a minute. It's really important. One of the things, if you're running in an organization, the project managers, the internal project managers that you have, need to understand that they're in a peer relationship, not a colonial relationship with the freelance. It's a different model of management. And may I ask, how many of your organizations have taken the time to teach project managers in different areas who are going to use freelancers how to work with freelancers? It's not something that sort of comes with birth. Next, I have access to the information I need, and clientele team members are technically and professionally competent. The message here is, if you're really good as a client, you're going to get extraordinary value. But if you're not really good, if you haven't decided that it's important to be a good manager of the freelancers, if you think about them as just kind of augmentation. We had a consulting firm, we used to call them stringers. Augmentation is almost as insulting as stringers, if I may call it that, in the sense that I'm not augmenting anybody. I'm delivering a job. You gotta treat them like they matter. Two more. Do I have another 5 minutes?
I mean, you're a bit over time.
Okay, quick question. Can I have 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, next one. I love this. And what I love about this is the notion that we've got to professionalize in our relationships with enterprise clients. We're going to do just fine with startups and scale-ups. We're going to do great with seed companies. But if we want to work with the big boys and the big ladies, we're going to have to do a better job of demonstrating trust. This is our first shot at doing it. It's 13 items. It says, get 10 clients to talk about how you're doing. Take a look at the data. If you pass a certain threshold, you win the Trusted Platform Partner Award. And you know, it makes a difference. Right now we have 3 winners. One is one is Indie List in Ireland. The second is Olo in Brazil. And the third is G2I, which is a React shop in Florida. And what's important about this is that each of these organizations are young. They're trying to break through the din, break through the noise, show that they're professional, show that they've got great trust from their clients, and this is able to do that. It is free. And any of your organizations that are interested in doing this, I would love to work with you. I think it's an important thing. 2 more things very quickly. One is collaborating for growth and influence. As I said before, we met in Spain last year, the UK this past year, LATAM is now, Germany this summer, and more in 2024, and I hope it'll be the Middle East. And the idea here is we are better together than separate. Do you remember the original, how many of you took a basic economics class? Okay, do you remember the argument which was two hot dog stands, how do you put them on a beach? Do you put them at opposite ends or do you bring them together in the middle? How many of you say, put them at opposite ends to avoid competition? Right answer. Right answer. The whole idea is to bring them together, to build the market. As you bring your markets together, whether they're in Slovakia, as I've talked to people, or in Spain, or in the UK, or in Denmark, there is power in being able to help your freelancers to have more impact. And then finally, this is an amazing time of innovation. I won't spend a lot of time on this stuff, but just take a look at it. AI is a transformation in progress. Pro Teams has done an incredible job of focusing on teams rather than individuals. Bubty and Gig AI are building private talent pools for organizations intending to disrupt you with more network global collaborations. Uncompany is a Nashville company working with a German company, Uplink. It's exciting to see these connections. There's more tool innovation for freelancers at Contra. They really did allow me to build a website in about 30 minutes. That was pretty cool. I see much more staffing fusion, and it's a challenge. The question is, can we get along? And we shall see. I think that the guys at Marker Markholt, free agents, and a couple of others are engaged in these challenges. I'm not convinced, but I think I heard an optimistic version. I see IBO communities, if you are not at the top of your game as a freelancing platform, I'm sorry, I'll just be 2 minutes. You are about to get killed by independent business owner platforms. Honeybook is an example, Wethos is an example, Collective is an example. The question was, well, who are we, right? Are we freelancers? Are we independent business owners? All that stuff. This is a service-based, meetup-based, community-based orientation. And a lot of freelancers are saying, we're not getting that much work from our platform. Let's at least go where we can get services, get help, meet with people, and sharpen our saw. And so what we saw is, as an example, went from 20,000 to 80,000 members over the course of 6 months, and they came from other platforms because they're able to provide a range of services that people really appreciate. And then finally, we're just gonna, the reality is, and I'll just say this at the end, if you haven't seen signs of consolidation, you will. I get a request every couple of weeks, can you introduce us to somebody? I'm not an investment banker, I'm not a VC, but I have friends. And one of the things that is very clear right now is that an awful lot of these platforms are marvelous in concept, and they're not going to make it. Sir?
Just the last, maybe last question.
They're going to kick me off in a minute, I know that for sure.
I've been working in the German freelance staffing industry for the last 25 years.
I remember.
Entrepreneur and investor. And a lot of things, almost everything has changed in the 25 years.
Yes.
What not has changed is the regulatory environment.
Yes.
Because it's still stuck in an industrial age, at least in many European countries.
Yes.
And there are a lot of reasons for that, a lot of colliding interests.
There's only one reason for that.
But one thing, what could help? One thing, from my opinion, what could help is, you mentioned stronger together, right? Better
Yes.
together.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yes.
But it's not only our industry getting together
True.
to make the point, but all these large corporates that are present here in
Sure.
the room, for example, with the political power they have, they're being listened to, raising their voice and actually telling the public what competitive edge freelance work is giving them. How can we...
It's a good question. I have a different theory, but yours might be the correct one. Here's my theory, and it's my favorite descriptor. How many of you know the comedian in the US? His name is George Carlin. 3? That's depressing. Okay. George Carlin had George Carlin, and I hope I'm not insulting anybody when I say this, George Carlin was a very funny guy, and he had this riff, and he said, let's talk about God. There are two things we know about God. The first thing is that he or she loves us, wants us to be happy, and thinks the best of us. And the second thing is he needs money. That is the problem in so many countries. There's not a pathway to tax collection. And it's been very tough. To give you an example, in Argentina, they lose $3 billion annually of taxable income because it goes to work in the States. And they just don't have a process. So if you want governments to be nicer to you, figure out a way to give them their share. And if you do, governments will be a whole lot more interested in supporting the freelance movement. Historically, they only know how to collect taxes from companies, right? Ma'am, Abir.
I just want to make a quick intervention on this point.
Did I do something wrong?
No.
Okay.
Because I'm excited about
okay.
it, just to share what Saudi Arabia has done. So for the freelance economy, they invented a license, and now 1,800,000 freelancers are on that platform. Nobody's working yet. The regulations are not there yet. But I mean, they are just at least started, and they still don't know how to do it. I'm sure all of you in the room here are welcome to join us in our tough mission. It's a very exciting mission, how they regulated it because of the reason just Jon shared, which is the tax regulations.
Thank you. Let me take one more question, and then I'm going to just...
I'm going to be the bad guy
No,
now.
be the bad guy.
People have
Be the bad guy. I'm just going to show you one more thing, and that is subscribe to our newsletter. We're trying to bring together this community on a global scale. Freelance-focus.com. It's free, it's good, and it will make you healthier. And with that, thank you. It was tough.